Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our Global Outlook is sponsored by Maury's newsletter, Global Outlook. You can get your own complimentary copy by just logging onto our website, theworldreport.org. Factions in the Middle East are starting to show their true allegiances. We call this the clarification of the Middle East. Meanwhile, China is expanding and taunting the West, while its junkyard dog North Korea is getting very belligerent, showcasing its nuclear weapons arsenal and threatening its neighbors with missile launches, and the world just yawns. Let's start with North Korea, because I don't think anyone's really paying attention. No. You may hear a blurb here or there, but I mean, the provocation coming out of Pyongyang should be startling to the rest of the world, and no one's really paying attention.
Yeah, could you imagine a country like Iran saying, we now are capable of incinerating New York? Everybody'd go crazy. I mean,
and having the missiles on display.
And this Kim Jong-un, who is the grandson of the founder of modern North Korea, is a guy that he looks like a little
cartoon character,
like a little fat dumpling out of a cartoon. So nobody pays any attention to him, and they always think, well, somehow China will take care of it. China is playing, they're playing this guy. Sure, China could get rid of those guys in 24 hours, but China, and I think that's one of the reasons why nobody takes them seriously. They think that if anything like that started to happen, China would jump in. But we're depending on China. Maybe China says, go ahead and send one of those things on. We're not going to do anything. There's no guarantee that China will pull.
Well, they just launched 2 missiles recently. Fortunately, they didn't go anywhere. I mean, one exploded in the middle of the air. But they were headed they were pointed to Japan. I mean, and China is expanding its military all over Asia.
Oh, no, there's no question. What about those islands?
And another thing, we just sent aircraft carrier and I think the 7th Fleet into the South China Sea to kind of poke our finger into China. Part of me thinks that maybe Obama is starting to provoke these countries, looking at his own end of term coming here. I know I'm getting into conspiratorial area when I start to talk about this, but why else would you be sending the 7th Fleet into the South China Sea?
I see it just a little different. You may be right, because we're both conspiratorialists. I think it's the military has a certain amount of leverage, and that where they do things up beyond what they hear from the Pentagon. They've done, they are furious right now. I don't have any direct contact. Who? The military, the professional military.
Our military.
All you have to do is listen to these guys on Fox. And what's this guy, the 3-star general they got, and Hayes, I think is his name. And these guys are saying they feel that they're being set upon by this government. And they're willing to test the stretch to which they're allowed to go in order to get something done. I don't think Obama has anything to do with it. I think also they are counting on the fact that his time in the office is so short that by the time he starts trying to come down on him, he'll be out of there. But I don't think he has anything to do with provoking an incident in the China Sea. I think the military is flexing its muscle.
I wouldn't be poking at China at all right now, especially given how much they've expanded their military over the past 2 decades.
The biggest in the world.
And missile defense, missile systems, nuclear capability, interballistic continental missiles. I mean, China is on the march, let's put it that way. I wouldn't be poking them if I was the Americans.
You're absolutely right. The 2 nations that are most technologically advanced militarily today?
China would be one of them.
Israel. Israel is the second one.
Israel has its own survival at stake on a daily basis.
Oh, I know, but nobody would mess with them because you notice when those knifings that's been going on there, they don't take anybody to court. They just shoot them on the spot. And I think that's...
Taxpayer relief shot. And save the money.
That's exactly. I think they're handling it very smartly, by the way.
So we've been talking about the clarification of the Middle East. I'm sure our viewers are wondering, what the heck does that mean? basically the faces are starting to become a little bit more obvious. The Shia, the Sunni, who's aligned with who's got who's back.
You just made a very important statement. The clarification between the Shia and Sunni, it's never been sharper before, because what you've got now, when you used to have the dictators, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein,
Mubarak,
Assad, Mubarak, the whole bunch. And the fact that they were either Shia or Sunni, it didn't make a lot of difference. These were just murdering scum dictators.
Yeah, because how else could you be a minority like Saddam Hussein, a Sunni, and control the entire population of Iraq, which is mostly Shia?
Perfect example. Well, now it's all, whether you're a Shia and you're Sunni. And, you know, the story goes, it was a family fight between Muhammad and his son-in-law Ali. The Ali became the guy who headed up the Shia movement, and the followers of Muhammad became the Sunni. I'm oversimplifying, but it's something like that. So what you've got right now, what is the one country in the Middle East today that's known as a Sunni leadership? Saudi Arabia. Now, nominally Egypt, but Egypt's got a pretty sharp guy by the name of El-Sisi, who has a nice relationship with Netanyahu and a nice relationship with Putin. Things have changed now. It's no longer a matter of everybody's against. Israel is getting along just fine with Saudi Arabia, by the way. Their foreign minister and the Israeli foreign minister were seen in public shaking hands with each other, which means a lot in that part of the world.
That was the one common enemy that all the Arabs could share together was the Jews.
Right. Exactly.
Whether you were Sunni, Wahhabi, Kurdish, whatever you were.
The dictators had to have an enemy because they didn't want to be Sunni against Shia. They weren't ready for that confrontation. So they used Israel. Wiping out Israel was the thing. And they had 3 wars, and they got their nose bloody in every one of them. But the point today, it's changed. Today, it's strictly, you brought it out, and you brought it out absolutely right on the money. You've got the Shia movement, which now, interestingly, is being totally supported by Russia. And Russia is still a strong military capability. And sure, they moved a few troops out, but they now have...
Wasn't their main goal just to prop up Assad, to stop the West from trying to overthrow their buddy Bashar al-Assad?
In a way, yes, but the big thing was, remember, they under Khrushchev, who was in there for a long time, and Brezhnev, who followed him, and until the Soviet Union broke up, their big strength was with Egypt. And once, when that deal failed, you know, after the 6-Day War, and they were looked weak because Israel not only won that war, but the October War that followed. They realized, Egypt realized Russia wasn't the guy, so they went over to the United States, and Russia didn't have anybody else, so they started looking for another contact, and they started working with Iran, and they got a seaport, which the Tsars never delivered. So Russia having a warm water seaport was a major factor, and now...
Well, that was part of the whole Crimea invasion.
Absolutely. You're getting into another war, but you're correct. That was the whole idea, to stop them from trying to break through the Dardanelles, which the Ottoman Empire controlled. Well, now they have 2 seaports. Well, the latest one is Tarsus, and they got an airport now. So, but in effect, the Iranians are now marching to the drummer from Moscow, Putin.
And you've got the Sunnis in Saudi Arabia, but you also have the Yemenis that are starting to attack on the southern front.
Yeah, but the Yemenis are Shias. They are associated with the Iranians.
And that's another reason why Saudi Arabia is quaking.
And Saudi Arabia made a major mistake. They killed the leader of the Shias of Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you're aware of that, a couple months ago. And 10% of the population of Saudi Arabia, which is small by Mideastern standards, it's about 28 million, but 10% happen to be in the area where they have most of the oil fields. And if those guys really got uppity, shall we say, they may suddenly stop production in those oil fields. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. The move of oil from $26 a barrel in mid-December to 40 as we speak. It might even be a little more by the time the next show comes on. But I think we're definitely going up on oil. And that's because it's to the interest of Russia, and the Saudis are not going to stand up to Russia.
It's basically in the best interest of all the oil-producing countries.
Venezuela cannot exist without oil at the $60 level. Russia cannot exist. See, Russia has all these pipelines. They go through Central and Eastern Europe. They go through the Balkans, the Baltics, and all they got to do is put their stuff in there, and they have a deal now with China.
Right.
But the point is, if it's way under their cost, they